This is part 3 of 3 of the Unit 4 review packet. Number 36. Which cheerleader's hands are farther apart? Justify your response. For the past few questions, we've noted that the bigger angle produces a bigger side. So here we have two cheerleaders, assuming that their arms are the same lengths. This cheerleader has an angle of 65 degrees, which means her arms would be farther apart. So our answer would be B. 37. What is the range of possible values for x? This is a different application of the hinge theorem. Here, we look at our side of 18 and our side of 16, and notice that 18 is bigger. This means that this angle must be bigger than this angle of 4x minus 8. I can use that fact to write an inequality. 4x minus 8 must be less than 90, so that's a right angle. This will tell me the maximum possible size for this angle. To get x by itself, add 8, and then divide by 4. Less than, let's see, 98 divided by 4 would be 49 over 2. This is the largest this angle can be. It has to be smaller than 90, so this is the maximum. Now we need to find the minimum. Well, the smallest an angle can be is just barely above 0. So that gives us a second inequality that we can solve. 4x minus 8 must be bigger than 0, because we know this whole angle together has to be larger than that. Add 8 to the other side. Divide by 4 and get 2. So this means that my value of x has to be larger than 2, but smaller than 49 halves. To put that into a compound inequality, we would say 2 is less than x is less than 49 halves. 38. Use your knowledge of midsegments to answer the following questions. Which of the segments are parallel to segment AC? A midsegment and its base are always parallel. AC is here. The midsegment that would go with AC would be DF. (39) What are 3 pairs of parallel segments in triangle DEF? Here they're asking me to identify all of the parallels. Well, here's DF. Its midsegment would be ON. DE would have a midsegment of MN. And finally, FE would have a midsegment of MO. So my 3 pairs of parallel segments would be DE parallel to MN, DF parallel to ON, and MO, FE. Number 40, solve for x. Midsegments are always half the length of their bases, which means that there's 2 ways you can write each of the equations. You can either cut the base in half, or you can double the midsegment. In this particular problem, if I try and cut the base in half, that's going to give me 1/2 x plus 4.5. If I double the midsegment, that's going to give me 4x, which is a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to double the midsegment to make it equal to the base. So that'll give me the equation 2, so I'm doubling, 2 times 2x equals x plus 9. So 2 times 2x would be 4x. Subtract x from both sides. That'll give us 3x equals 9, and then divide by 3. (41) What's the distance across the river? The distance across the river, which we'll call x, is the midsegment. Now my rule is the midsegment is half the base. So my choices were, I can either double the midsegment to get the base, or I can halve the base to make it equal to the midsegment. Now it looks like having the base would be pretty easy. So I'm going to write this one as midsegment equals half the base. X is already by itself. Half of 92 would be 46. Number 42. In triangle RST, G, H, and K are midpoints, If RS is 28, GH is 20, and RH equals 22, what are the lengths of KH, ST, and GK? We know that each of these are midpoints, so that means that RS and HK is its midsegment. Those go together. Next up, ST and GH would be a base and a midsegment, followed by RT and GK. Looks like the easiest one to find is going to be KH. If this is 28, we know that the midsegment has to be half of that. So that means that KH would be half of 28, which is 14. Next up, this segment is 20. ST is the base that goes with 20. We know that the base is double the midsegment, so that means that ST has to be 40. Finally, the last ones, we've done ST, we've done KH, now we have to find the length of GK. Now there's a small problem finding the length of GK in that we don't know the length of the entire base. However, we do know that all of these, GH and K, are midpoints, which means that this segment is congruent to this one. So if this is 22, it means this has to be 22 as well, and together, they have to be 44. If the base is 44, we know the midsegment has to be half of that. Half of 44 would be 22. So that means that GK is 22. Apply the perpendicular and angle bisector theorems for the following problems. If line KF, is the perpendicular bisector of segment GH, find X and HK. Because this is the perpendicular bisector and K is on it, that means that these two lengths have to be equal. Because those segments are congruent, we can write an equation, 3x plus 7 equals 40. To solve for x, subtract 7, and then divide by 3. And that's going to give us 11. We found our value for x. Now we need to find the value of HK. Now I could plug this 11 in for x. However, I know these two segments are congruent. If this one's 40, it means this has to be 40 as well. So if I'm clever, I can take a little shortcut, save a little time, and just say that HK is 40. Because those segments were congruent. 44. Solve for x. Here, we've got two congruent segments, two right angles. That means that this angle has been bisected. That means that 3x has to equal 54. In general, if you see one of these problems with a lot of right angles and congruent segments throwing around and you're not sure what to do, good idea is just to set one expression equal to the other one. All right, so that means 3x has to equal 54. To get x by itself, divide by 3. And 54 divided by 3 be 18. 45, what is mn? 6x minus 1, 3x plus 8. We know that this is a perpendicular bisector because this part is a right angle and these two are congruent to each other, so they've been cut in half. So because that is a perpendicular bisector, we can set 6x minus 1 equal to 3x plus 8. Start by subtracting 3x to get all our x's together. 6x minus 3x would be 3x. Add that 1 to the other side. Divide by 3. The question did not ask me to find x. The question said, what is mn? So I need to take this value of x, and I need to plug it in for x. That would be 6 times 3 minus 1. 18 minus 1 would be 17. So my value for mn, 17. Number 46, what is the length of OP? This angle has been bisected. These two things are congruent, and because these both lie in the angle bisector, it means the distance to the sides has to be the same. So 6x equals 3x plus 12. Subtract the 3x on both sides. 3x equals 12. Divide by 3 and get x equals 4. Scroll back to my original question. It's asking me to find the length of OP. OP is here, so I need to plug in 4 to that 3x plus 12. Now, if I wanted to cheat a little bit, I know that these two segments are congruent, so I could just plug the 4 into 6x and find 24 rather than try and do this. But just to show, I'll plug in 4 here, so that'd be 3 times 4 plus 12. 12 plus 12 is 24. So we would say that OP equals 24, which is the same thing I could have found by doing this. 47. If point X is on the perpendicular bisector of segment ST, which of the following is true? So we have XT compared to XS, so that'd be these two. We're comparing XT to XS in all of these. Now, last time we saw a similar problem to this. It said this is on a perpendicular bisector, which means this is a 90-degree angle. These are equal. We found that these two segments were congruent. So we need to find the one that says XS is equal to XT. And that'd be B. 48. The monkey bars are located midway between the slide and the tether ball. Which of the following are about equidistant from the slide and the tether ball? We know that this is a midpoint. So if we were to turn this midpoint into a perpendicular bisector, just by drawing a line through it, anything that lies on this perpendicular bisector is going to be equidistant from the two endpoints. 4 square lies on that perpendicular bisector. So that means that 4 square is going to be equidistant from the slide and the tether ball.